The retriever is the invaluable companion of the bird hunter, whether for waterfowl or for upland game. These dogs, bred and trained to find and bring back downed birds in any kind of terrain, are nearly indispensable for the conscientious sportsman who wants to account for every bird he brings down. Without the help of trained retrievers, many birds would be lost or die beyond the reach of the hunter. No true sportsman wants to kill needlessly, and a good retriever is his insurance that he will not. This film is about the sport of retriever field trials, a sport which was developed to test the skills, both natural and acquired, of the various retriever breeds. Retriever field trials, as an organized sport, are of fairly recent origin. The first one licensed by the American Kennel Club was held by the Labrador Retriever Club in 1931. Today, AKC licenses some 190 trials a year. W. Averill Harriman, former governor of New York and ambassador to the Soviet Union, had a dog in that 1931 trial, and he recalls how it was.
The guns and the handlers of the dogs stood in line, and the pheasant was flushed. I've forgotten just how it was flushed, and one of the guns was appropriate for the direction in which the bird was flying, shot the bird. And then the judge called the number of the dog that he wanted to have sent out, and the dog went out and retrieved the bird, or tried to. Of course, the other dogs were standing there, and you weren't allowed to touch them, and they weren't allowed to break, and that was one of the troubles I had the first day that I handled dogs alone. So this was where they handled it.
Field trials have come a long way since then. Now a retriever is asked to mark as many as 4 falls and remember them long enough to retrieve them one at a time. Modern retrievers are also expected to follow their handlers' signals to find falls they haven't seen, sometimes hundreds of yards away. Although other sporting breeds sometimes serve as retrievers, only the 6 breeds classified as retrievers are eligible to compete in AKC licensed trials. They are Labrador Retriever, Chesapeake Bay Retriever, Golden Retriever, Flat-coated Retriever, Curly-coated Retriever, and the Irish Water Spaniel. Labradors, Goldens, and Chesapeakes are the most numerous at modern-day trials. The basic purpose of the field trial is to test the natural and acquired abilities of the dogs and the teamwork between handler and dog. The first requirement for a good trial is a suitable site, one which will provide the kind of terrain in which game would normally be found. While the terrain has to be rough and varied enough to test the abilities of the dogs, it must also be accessible to the caravan of pickups, station wagons, RVs, and other rolling stock favored by field trial participants. There should be water for water retrieves, and various kinds of land cover for testing the dogs on upland game. It takes courage and perseverance to do the job in this kind of country. Putting on a modern-day retriever field trial is a complicated operation, and the club that undertakes the responsibility has its work cut out. Many months of preparations begin to bear fruit as a committee member goes over the site with the judges on the day before the trial to give them any help he can while they plan the tests. A trial requires a contingent of gunners and bird throwers. Before the trial is over, they will spend a good many uncomfortable hours in the fields or the water, placing birds where the judges direct. The field trial committee must supply birds as required by the judges and see that they are properly cared for. No wild game is used in a trial. All birds are raised specifically for the purpose. Since the tests are run over all kinds of terrain, the committee must be prepared with boats, decoys with anchors, waders, spray paint, and whatever else is needed, including insect repellent. They must supply a sound truck, CB radios, and people to man them to maintain communications among all the elements of the trial: judges, marshals, guns and throwers, contestants, and gallery. The sponsoring club provides and sets up holding blinds, or the equivalent, for dogs and handlers waiting to go up to the line. The marshals are responsible for positioning the gallery so spectators will not bother the contestants, and for making sure the spectators stay put. One of the big jobs is controlling traffic and parking. Since tests are often miles apart and access difficult, moves have to be organized in advance and strictly controlled if utter confusion is to be avoided. Once on the line, the judges have their full concentration on the dogs, and a gopher is invaluable in keeping them comfortable and happy. These are just a few of the thousands of details that have to be seen to in a successful trial. In addition to what goes on at the site, the club must provide such things as field trial headquarters, directional signs, transportation, and hospitality. A well-run trial is the product of hard work by many people who take great satisfaction in putting it on. Of major importance to a trial are the judges. Not only do they judge the actions of the dogs, but using the terrain at their disposal, they create the situations in which the dogs must perform. They are charged by the regulations to create tests that approximate natural hunting conditions. However, the tests can't be so simple and easy that nearly every dog will turn in a perfect performance. Nor should they be so tricky and difficult that they produce nothing but failures and poor performances. The key to good tests is to think in terms of setting up situations that will make the dog use his natural and acquired abilities, rather than to try to trick him or make him fail. Let's listen in as judges John Lundy, on the left with a hat, and Richard Greenleaf plan the tests for an open all-age stake.
Do you think you could hide a set of guns behind that lumber? Sure, you could, easy. Have that bird over the first little ditch and into the pothole so they have a chance to stop. Right, that's number one. Number two to your left down in the sagebrush someplace. And number three right in the middle, shot. Yeah, we'll let our first guns lay down behind the rocks in the woods so they won't get decapitated. Let me walk down there and see if I can hide back of that lumber. Go ahead, but I know you can't.
There are two basic types of tests. The marking test, in which the dog sees and must remember where the birds fall, and the blind, in which the dog must follow his handler's direction to find the bird. Because of the unique nature of each site, judges have a great deal of discretion in creating tests, but their main criterion is always to try to approximate natural hunting conditions. This is the scene of a water blind, which was actually run during this trial. Here's how it was finally set up. The line is partway up a sagebrush-covered hill, so handler and dog are visible to each other all the way. We are looking at the test area from that vantage point. The dog must cross a field about 140 yards wide, swim through water about 30 feet wide, cross a little spit of land, through a rail fence, and swim about 40 yards through a narrow cut to find a duck in open water on the other side of that point. Guns and throwers from a previous test remain to the right as a diversion. The wind is from near left to far right. Now let's see how it works in actual practice. This black Labrador takes a line too far to the right, probably remembering the previous test.
Over!
He is handled to the left and handled again to send him further back. He wants to hunt the little tongue of land and has to be handled again.
Back!
This time he goes straight to the bird. An excellent example of teamwork between handler and dog. Now the yellow lab takes a good line, but he doesn't really believe he's supposed to cross that water. Before he has a chance to do the same thing on the other side, the handler alertly handles him again and sends him on his way. Once past the little point of land, he wins the bird and makes the pickup. One of the marks of a good judge is the creativity he displays in designing challenging tests over the terrain available to him. Another black Labrador. This dog is handled before he gets to the water and given a strong back signal.
Back!
But he looks back for directions or pops right at the edge of the water and has to be handled again. This is considered a minor fault on a blind retrieve, although it would be a moderate fault on a marking test. He pops again on the little spit of land, then goes in for the long swim and picks up the bird. Of the three dogs, the first black Labrador would probably have scored highest with the judges, with the yellow Labrador second. The third dog, the other black Labrador, might not even be called back for the next test because of his failure to follow the line for any distance before popping or turning around to look for directions. Judges will use combinations of land and water. Their purpose is not to make the dogs fail, but to test all of the natural and acquired abilities of the dogs and the teamwork between dog and handler. They will run enough tests to be sure they have at last the best 10 or 12 dogs from which to pick the winners. On at least one test during a trial, each dog is asked to honor the work of another dog. As this dog finishes the test, he is taken to a spot where he can see the falls for the next dog. He must sit steady without breaking or bothering the other until that dog's handler sends him out. How does a dog become a field trial retriever? In the first place, a good retriever is born with most of the qualities he needs to make the grade. Careful breeding produces dogs with the instinct to retrieve and the physique to do it. The next requirement is a trainer with the time and patience to bring out those abilities. This puppy thinks he's playing, but he's actually having his natural instinct to fetch reinforced as he plays. He gets his first introduction to water and finds it delightful. Older puppies are put to work retrieving under actual field conditions. This pond is chosen particularly to provide all kinds of distractions and obstacles. The puppy checks out every stump and lily pad on the way to the dummy. He will soon learn to ignore the distractions and go right to the bird. This is the same puppy you saw getting his first taste of retrieving. Now he is ready for real training. As his inborn abilities are developed, he is also taught basic obedience, to heel, to stay, to sit steady on the line, to deliver to his trainer's hand, all elements of acquired ability called control or line manners. He is taught to hold on to the bird until he returns and to give it up willingly on command. Good line manners are important in both field trial and actual hunting situations. It is at this age that the trainer finds out if his dog has the natural abilities he requires: memory, intelligence, attention span, nose, courage, perseverance, and style. This dog obviously has both courage and style. Of major importance among the acquired abilities of a retriever is his response to direction. If a dog has not learned to accept direction, his handler cannot help him. In teaching these skills, some trainers use a small field in which vertical, horizontal, and sometimes diagonal paths have been mowed. These paths help influence the dog to take the directions the handler indicates. Dummies are placed at the end of each path. This pattern is called a wagon wheel. Others are in the form of a T or double T. From the center, the handler sends the dog to fetch the dummy. Next, he puts the dog on stay and sends him from a distance. In this way, the dog learns that by following his handler's signals, he will find the bird. Eventually, through a process of praise and correction spanning many hours in the field, dog and handler become a team. To the retriever's natural abilities, the trainer has added steadiness, control, response to direction, and delivery to hand. Let's watch a top retriever and his handler solve a field problem to see if he displays the natural and acquired abilities a field trial attempts to test. The first bird is thrown to the left into a patch of high grass on the side of a hill. The second is almost directly in front of the line in heavier cover. The third, the flyer, is in heavy cover near the water. The wind is blowing away from the line and to the right. The dog goes for the flyer, but is diverted by the water. Recovers and finds the bird after a short hunt. He showed good line manners and persevered after being drawn to the water. Now he goes for the middle bird. and shows good nose as he wins the bird as soon as he gets downwind of it in the heavy cover. An excellent retrieve. Now for a real test of memory. This last bird is further away. He remembers that. Even goes a little too far, but his nose comes to the rescue as he hunts upwind and scents the bird immediately. All in all, a good job. Now we're going to ask you to judge a test for yourselves. This is a triple landmark, run over rolling ground with both heavy and light cover. The first bird is thrown to the left of the line in a little point of cover. The second bird is thrown directly in front of the line into a patch of cover. The third bird, the flyer, is at a narrow angle to the first, but much further away. It is in light cover on the side of the hill. The wind is still blowing away and to the right of the line, but is nearly still. This is a tough memory test because the dog must recall that the first bird is short and the flyer is long, and fight his tendency to go to the same place for both. The first dog, a golden retriever, goes for the short bird first and makes an excellent retrieve, showing good memory. Now he goes right past where he found the first bird and takes a nearly perfect line to the flyer. On the last bird, he takes a good line, but is pulled to the right by the slope of the hill. With no wind to bring him the scent, he checks every patch of cover until he finds the right one. A long hunt, but successful. The golden retriever showed excellent line manners, and so does this black Labrador. He's also alert and eager, a very stylish retriever. He takes off like a shot and overruns the flyer. He is drawn even further off, but he sticks with it and finds the bird. Now he runs right over the short bird and has to be handled back to it. He knows the third bird is in one of those patches of cover, and finally comes up with it. As this black Labrador bitch watches the falls, you can see eagerness in every line of her body. She overruns the short bird, but suddenly remembers it and comes racing back to retrieve it. And it's obvious she still remembers the area where the flyer fell. On the third bird, her line is nearly perfect. How did you rank them? Our judges ranked the black Labrador bitch first. They liked the fact that she remembered the short bird after she overran it and came back for it without forgetting there was another bird further out. They were also impressed with the perfect line to the third bird. A perfect line on the third pickup is much rarer than on the first. It shows excellent memory. The judges picked the golden retriever second. He was nearly perfect on the short bird and followed with a fast pickup of the long bird. He had a long hunt for the third, but came up with it without being handled. The black dog overran the second bird and had to be handled back to it, and this detracted from an otherwise good performance. Courage, style, attention, intelligence, nose, memory, perseverance, steadiness, control, response to direction, and delivery to hand. These are the qualities a retriever field trial attempts to measure. And the dogs that measure up at trial after trial become the elite of the sport, field champions and amateur field champions. Nearly every week, all over the country, sportsmen gather to compete with their dogs, striving through breeding and training to bring to the line the best retrievers, those who find and bring back their birds with courage and style.